How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bushradical. In this episode of Bushradical, I want to do something completely different. I'm going to start from scratch and build up a knife shop. I've made a few knives over the years. I've made dozens and dozens and dozens of Ulus, and it's something I've just kind of been getting drawn into more. Last spring, Brooke and I went up north and we shot a factory tour of Bark River knives. It's very interesting. I've never owned a Bark River knife. I've never actually used one, but fascinating. I love manufacturing. I love the whole process. And it seems like everybody I meet is kind of sucking me into the whole knife making world. I've got a friend out in California, Steve Ganem, and Steve will tell you everything he knows. Brooke and I met Jay Rao at Knives Ship Free, and Jay was like, and this is how you do it, and this is how you do it, and this is how you do it. And Mike Stewart over at Bark River Knives, Mike was like, this is how this works, and this is how that works, and I bring people in and I help people. And it blew my mind. I asked Mike, I said, who's your biggest competitor? And he said, there's no competitors. There's no competition in this industry. And I really didn't know what to say. I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? He's like, we're trying to do the best we can for the people who are fans of our brand. Other people are doing the same thing. All of us knife makers know each other. We're all friends to one extent or the next. We all help each other out. And it kind of blew my mind. I've never been in an industry like that. I've never been in a field where there is nothing but free information, nothing but help. You know, the person who you would assume is your competitor wants to bend over backwards to teach you everything that they know. Knife making is a one-off industry as far as I know. I've never seen anything like it. Of course, also this spring, if you saw our video on Knife Ship Free, Brooke and I got to meet Derek Bone just a very short time before he passed away. And Derek was somebody I was like, you know, I could hang out with this guy. We could be friends. This guy's a really cool person. Very free with the information, very easy to talk to, and just on a personal level, I really liked Derek. Derek was a really cool guy. He was fun to hang around with. Him and Jay up at Knives Ship Free. It was just another one of those things that says, you know, these are great people involved in this line of work. It's really unfortunate that I only got to meet Derek the one time. I only got to know him for a short amount of time before he passed. And he was another one of those guys that really set my head thinking in that direction of starting a little knife shop. Now, I love to make stuff. I built half a dozen houses. I've been involved in building another dozen or so houses that weren't mine, that weren't my projects. I've built hundreds and hundreds of foundations with other companies and with myself when I was in business for myself doing concrete. I built close to 100 foundations myself under my own company. I like to build stuff. I like making stuff. I like manufacturing things. I like figuring out all the parts and pieces and putting together a good package. So this is going to be the very first episode of the Bushradical Knife Shop. Honestly, I don't know what I'm going to call the knives I produce, what kind of a name brand I'm going to give them. This is just my progression from nothing into a knife shop, and I'm going to document every single step of the way, everything I do, every idea I have, from all the equipment that I'm putting together to the thoughts of how I'm going about sourcing parts and actually making knives. I want to get you guys on board and show you everything I'm doing right from the ground up, and I mean right from the very beginning. So let's start with the belt grinder. The other day I picked up a new used Hammond UBG 622. What the heck is that, you're asking? Unless you worked in an industrial machine shop in the last 60 years, you've probably never seen one, because it's old, and we're going to go through it right now and try to dial it in to make it do what we want it to do. Stay tuned. Oh, look at that. Now that is a piece of machinery. Now obviously this piece of gear is not from the world of knife making. This piece of gear is from the world of machine shop tech. The company Hammond Roto that built this machine has been around for 70, 80 years. They build shop equipment. So if you're working in a factory and you're grinding something, you're probably working on Hammond product or a Burr King or something like that. Let's take a look at how this thing's made. So currently this is a 1-horse engine. This big heavy cast iron pillow block's got sealed bearings inside of it. 5/8 shaft. You know, this may be at some point I may make this a variable speed by throwing a couple step pulleys on here. Now as you can see, there's a lot of stuff on this machine that's missing. It's missing the Platen arm. I've seen a picture online what that's supposed to look like. So we're going to fabricate a Platen for this. It's also missing a tool rest. There is no tool rest here. It was originally supposed to sit right here, and then there was a cast iron tool rest right there. What we're going to do is we're going to manufacture a tool rest for this machine and just kind of figure it out as we go. And we're going to manufacture a Platen for it. And we're going to put a new handle up top here for this top. Of course, this would be where you would pull down to take tension off the belt to change the belt. Another thing that you'll notice about this belt grinder is right now it has a 2x42 belt on it. This machine is actually anything from a 2x30 all the way up to a 2x60. This machine is actually classified as a 2x60, so that's what I'm going to set this up for once my belts arrive. If you look here on the back side of this machine, this main rod is what everything is built off of. This is an 1.25 inch keyway shaft. The keyway is actually a triangle shaped groove, and these set screws, they center all the parts on the keyway. You can see the very end of that screw is a cone shaped, and it fits right into this triangle shaped keyway. When you thread these in nice and tight, it centers these castings on this keyway shaft and makes sure that everything is true. That 1-horse motor gives it a lot of grunt. Power. Of course, this right up here is the tracking screw. This has a really rock solid tracking mechanism. Here's the spring that keeps a spring loaded tension on the belt itself, and it's a solid spring. You can see the back side of that tracking screw right here. It takes this whole casting and moves it up or down to change the camber of that wheel. First things first, there's supposed to be a post right here with a knob on the end of it so you can have the leverage to pull this head down to change the belts. Let's take care of that right now. Well, right there's a bolt that fits it. That's not too bad. Yeah, that would work, but I think we can do better. Now for the top of this handle, I got this cool black handle ball. I think that's gonna be perfect on top of that handle. Why in the world do I have one of these things just floating around here? Let me show you. This is one of my 3 wheel horse tractors. You can see the shift knobs on here. It's the same thing. I bought like 4 or 5 of these things for replacement shifter knobs. I still got one. So that doesn't quite fit, but I think I got the tool to turn it down just a bit. Perfect. After making 500,000 Ulus, I seem to have epoxy hanging around, so we'll epoxy this handle on top of that new bolt, thread it back into there, and this machine will once again have a nice little handle for taking the tension off the spring and allowing for belt changes. I'm just going to load this dude right up. This is 5-minute epoxy, so it's going to go pretty quick. And as soon as I get it all together, I'm just going to thread it into the machine and leave it sit there. Ooh. Ooh, yeah. That is nasty. That's just about perfect for what I had in mind. Wipe off some of that extra epoxy. Thread this guy right back into its home. And there you go. This machine is starting to look like it might come back around. Now on to the tool rest. This machine does not have a tool rest. This machine is probably 50, 60 years old. The company that made this machine is still in business, but when I called them and asked about parts, I didn't get very far with them. This machine is definitely out of production. So we're not going to be victim to circumstances. We're just going to build a tool rest with what we've got, and we're going to make it work. Okay, so I've got a piece of plate steel that is going to be about the right size for a complete tool rest for this. It's filthy. It'll need to be cleaned up. but I got that at the scrapyard the other day pretty much for free. What this tool rest is supposed to be, this is a kind of a curved surface, and there's supposed to be a piece that stuck out, and the tool rest would sit on top of that piece, and then you could adjust it to kind of get the angle you wanted. We don't have that option because this part is kind of a unique one-off part, and without that part around, we're just going to have to improvise. What I'm thinking here is to take a piece of cold rolled steel and let it set on top of this housing, bolt it to this bar, because this bar is solid. We'll bolt it to this bar with another plate over here. On top of this chunk of 2-inch angle iron, the table is going to sit. Now the first issue I'm running into is this hump right here. This hump is actually a part of the casting, and this is all solid iron. I'm going to want to take this area right here and kind of notch out so that this piece of 2x2 90 will sit flat on this section of the housing, and it'll make a little hump where it goes over top of this round portion of that casting. Because I want it to sit as flat as I can get it. First of all, I want to be back here beyond enough that I can get a bolt through. Let's mark this guy out. Now this is a piece of 2x2 angle iron, and the obvious issue here is it's not 2 inches between that bar and the belt. So I'm going to have to take this angle iron and take about 1/4 of an inch off so it actually clears this distance. So let's take a look at where we come with this. We've got 2 holes in this piece now. They're going to sit opposite sides of this bar to clamp this piece of angle iron solid to this 1.25 inch pipe. And also, we've taken about 1/4 of an inch off of this side, just ground it off. And hopefully that'll give us enough clearance so we miss this belt. Let's not forget our notch. That notch is out around this housing. It's not bad. A little bit extra light on that. You can see where that's ground out. Sits right over top of that casting, just perfect. You can see those holes on either side. Once this guy is set down on there nice and flush, I'll take a whoop. I'm going to take another piece of plate right here and make mating holes, and there'll be a bolt on both sides, and it'll just clamp right to that bar. And this bar is solid steel, so I mean it's going to be solid. Now once this is all clamped nice and solid, that table's going to sit right on top of there. Something like that. Another little chunk of plate right there, and we'll bolt that on. Everything I have for equipment so far is incredibly rugged, incredibly cheap, and incredibly old. This is a Craftsman drill press made by the Atlas Company out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, ironically. So is the bench grinder made by Hammond out of Kalamazoo. This is 1938-39 era. I picked this guy up in Flint. The one and only time I ever remember going to Flint. I picked this up in Flint for 75 bucks. Dump in a couple pilot holes here. Make this drilling a lot easier. Go ahead and throw on our little chunk of plate there. A couple heavy bolts. Squeezing onto that 1.25 inch rod in the middle. That 1.25 inch keyway shaft. This sucker is solid. Oh boy. The Platen is adjustable. You've got that center casting that'll allow it to get closer or farther away from the belt. The only problem is it doesn't exist. I don't have one. It didn't come with the machine. The company is still in business, but that part is a part that they don't make anymore, so we're just gonna have to make our own. I picked up this piece of super heavy 1.25 inch pipe. It's like a 1/4 inch thick walled pipe, but the outside's a little bit thicker than it needs to be to fit in that bore. So I'm just gonna kind of turn it down just a fuzz on the sander, and that's what we'll use for our Platen adjustment arm. Now I'm going to take this set of pipe cutters and just mark it. I'm not cutting it, I'm just marking it. I can see that that bar has a perfect mark all the way around and where it needs to be cut off. Alright, there's my piece. It's all ground so that it fits perfectly into that bore. Now the only thing I need to do is I need to put this in a vise and run that grinder right down the side and make a keyway. There we go. Not much of a keyway, but let's see if we can improve on this with maybe a little file work. See if we can work that keyway. Because the keyway that's on there is pretty much a good 90. Yeah, not bad. So here's the idea in a nutshell. This piece goes in like so, and this little set screw indexes into the keyway like so. And then that sucker's locked, man. It ain't going anywhere. It's solid, and it can't turn. Now what I've done here is I've got a bolt. I've got a bolt that's about the right size that will go all the way through, and it's also going to go through this piece of plate. This piece of plate is going to kind of be the arm that holds up the platen. So it's going to look like so. Let me get this nice and tight. Oh boy, there we go. Okay. Now that platen rest will go in like so. It'll get indexed with that screw like so. That up. Oh, that's good and solid. Now this platen will come right in behind just like so and will mount to that bar. Now this is what we're dealing with. We need to take the platen itself and affix it to the platen arm. And to do that, I just went to the hardware store today and I bought some 4x20 taper headed bolts with lock washers. Let me see if these suckers fit. They just fit. That's perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to countersink these holes so I can drop these things through and they'll just sit under the surface. All right. Here's our platen. Now let's drop in a bolt. And that's just right there, maybe just a fraction lower. Tricky to find center on that again. No rocket science here, just bolt that sucker together. Alright, so that should be basically our whole apparatus right there. Let's check it. Move this belt. Okay, so a couple things are obvious right from the get-go. Number one, this platen is not lined up with the belt because this bolt is all that's holding the platen to this attachment. I think I just need to loosen this bolt, adjust the platen, and then torque it down. I also probably should make a mark. When the platen is straight and the belt is lined up with the wheel, everything should be cool. Maybe I can just tap that over without ruining that keyway. That's about right. You know, as far as the gap's concerned, that's about right. It's not bad at all. Well, I think I got the platen just about where I want it. It's working good. It's a good solid platen. That looks pretty darn good. Now what I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to take that platen off one last time and I'm going to bevel the ends so that the belt slides over the ends and there's no sharp 90-degree corners or anything like that. I'm just going to make sure the ends are... I'm not even sure if that's the right thing to do. I'm just going to do it anyway because it seems right. I think I'm going to take this guy back over to the dirt cheap belt grinder and see if we can flatten it out a bit. Now this grinder was $45 from Menards, but don't laugh. I've made like 100 Ulus with this grinder. Not only is it good for doing just a standard handle with an Ulu, rocking it back and forth. I'll post that video, you guys can see how I make that. But also this little bit of area right here, this slack area, is perfect for just kind of scooping out the corners. It's actually, that's the machine for Ulus. rock up these corners a bit and make sure there's no hard 90s. Kind of getting there. We're getting there. Well, I think that's probably about as good as it's going to get for right now. Alright, now that we got a rig that's got a good solid platen, let's work on this tool rest table. You know, I got this piece of plate. Might as well just use the whole darn thing. Okay, so this piece of plate's 15. So that means 7.5 is our center. So there's our center line. That should give us the clearance for the belt. Let's go with one big cut so we can change our blades. And that way, if we don't like it, I'll just go up to I'll go up to the scrapyard, get some more steel, and we'll make something different. So I can see that this piece is not exactly a square piece of steel. That's all right though, I don't care. That's going to be one cut. We're going to have a hole right there, and the other cut is just going to be parallel to it, kind of like sewage. Let's do it. This plate also has to get cleaned off because it's grody. Somewhere in there-ish. There we go. Throw in that big old dude. Alright, so that's going to be our hole that these two lines are going to terminate on. That's about it, eh? I figured I'm going to put probably a bolt right there, probably a bolt right here, and then probably one right there. Something like that. There we go. To get her clamped down, I will run a drill bit through the work from the top. Lots of bolts to this sucker. These are lock nuts, so they're gonna bite and stay. Last couple turns on here sucks that screw head down into the metal. That screw may stay in there. If I ever go to take this apart, it may just stay in that table. And there we are. I think we're pretty much done with it. There is my new 2x60 belt grinder. Now you notice right now it's only 2x42. As soon as I get my 60-inch belts in, this will be up top here about another 9 inches. And let's find something to grind. We'll see how it works. So there you have it. There's my brand new used 2x60 knife grinder. Got a new Platen arm, new Platen support. Got a new tool rest built for it. And the entire machine, I'm into it about 65 bucks. About $15 and some steel from Alro Steel in Cadillac, Michigan. And the machine itself cost me $50, which I was happy to pay. Very good price for an old industrial piece of equipment. Thank you guys so much for watching this first episode of the Bushradical Knife Shop. I'm going to get the equipment situated and get the parts and pieces sourced, get all the players in line, and put some knives out. Right now I've got a few good pieces of vintage industrial equipment. If you watch this channel, you know everything I've got, everything I use is pretty old school. And of course this machine is no exception whatsoever. I may be an old hand at making ulus, but making knives, I don't have a ton of experience. I'm going to learn as I go. And I'm going to teach anybody that knows less than I do. There'll be no secrets of how I build my knives, and I want to pass all that information on because that seems to be the way this industry is. Everyone I've met wants to give the next guy all the help they need. I want to definitely continue that tradition of passing on knowledge to the next group of people. So as I'm learning and as I'm building up my shop, hopefully if you're into knife making, if you're interested in that topic, you'll find something of value in these videos. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Dave Whipple. You've been watching Bushradical. And be radical, eh? See you soon.